evening, beautiful people, and welcome to another In Conversation with Gustav, where it's a series where I interview people who are either very important to me, I find interesting, or changing the world, as you will hear tonight. So I am extremely privileged to have the wonderful Clarissa, who is co-founder of YouCanFreeUs, as well as the Ukrainian Compassion
Ukraine, that's correct. Yeah.
And I've been looking forward to having in my chair for so long. So with no further ado, Clarissa, welcome.
Thank you very much. Such a pleasure to be here, Gustav, and to share both issues that I'm so passionate about. I mean, I've shared them with you for so many years now. And one of them is the fight against modern slavery and human trafficking, which is what YouCanFree is all about. But most recently, in the last few weeks, actually, is a very new thing. We have launched this campaign called Compassion Ukraine, which is an appeal to really help the most vulnerable suffering from the disaster of war. And it has been a terrible thing, a real tragedy.
And I think, obviously this is at the height of conversation at the moment. But I think before we go for Compassion Ukraine, tell us a little bit so I've been hearing about YouCanFreeUs, and I've actually been, every time you've told me the small statistics about what actually goes on. So tell our listeners out there, what is it that you do? And
So YouCanFreeUs started 12 years ago, so over a decade. And it started around the time I was living in India. And I think it is the fruit of actually what we saw happening on the ground. So there was a lot that we could see. I mean, 10 years ago, people really didn't understand much about this word modern slavery. So I remember talking about this, Gustav, with people. Oh, I'm fighting modern slavery. People are like, what are you talking about? What is modern slavery? Now, because the media has covered it extensively, I think people do have an understanding of what it is. But I remember people saying, no, slavery has finished a long time ago. What is this? So we saw exploitation of children on the streets. We saw exploitation of women. We heard stories. We read a lot about it. And then in 2010, a group of us, it was a group from the US together with us in India. We were living in Delhi, New Delhi those days, decided to start this organization with the focus of rescuing and rehabilitating women and children that have been through the horrors of modern slavery. Human trafficking is actually the same word. Some people say human trafficking. Nowadays we use the expression modern slavery. And again, sexual, commercial exploitation, as well as forced labor of all forms. A horrendous thing that happened, that happened everywhere in the world, is actually happening as we speak on our doorstep as well. And it's very hard to sort of believe that, but I think now people, as we hear more and more cases, being shown, I think people now believe that actually it's not something that will happen in a poor village in a third world country, but it's actually something that actually happens right here in London as we speak. So we set up this organization 12 years ago, as I said, and we opened our first safe houses. And those houses are long-term rehabilitation homes for women and children, where we basically provide everything from nutrition to accommodation, new clothing, therapies, and they stay with us for a long term, like 2 to 3 years even, until they have a new hope, until they feel restored physically, emotionally, spiritually. We offer them a diversity of different vocational training programs, and then we hold their hands until they find a job. And then, they sort of move on. And we have a lot of partnerships in place. Hair salons like this one that offer to train 1 or 2 of our women. We have call centers. We have a diversity of hotels. And throughout the years, we have a lot of success stories, Gustav. Like, I think I might have told you about the girl who became a sous chef in a 5-star hotel in Mumbai. After being in our program, etc. Others have moved on in different careers. So we do have a lot of success stories. We work with a very small number of women or victims or survivors at a time, which I think differentiates us from a lot of organizations. And at the same time, it makes me feel sometimes the numbers are not very impressive, because we're not talking about thousands of women. We're talking about dozens every year.
Right.
And throughout the years, hundreds. Yeah.
But I think one of the things that you said earlier, and the first time you spoke to me about this, that kind of resonated with me, was the fact that people who've suffered such severe trauma needs hand-held holding.
They do.
And the fact that you guys provide them with the therapy, all the right steps, because it's one thing just taking people off the street, but if you don't, it's like that saying, if you give someone a fish, they eat a meal, but if you teach them how to fish, you teach them skills for life.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that really resonated with me, the fact that you are taking people who have suffered immense trauma,
Yes.
helping them process that trauma, but then not just helping them process that, then giving them the tools to actually go back into the world, because
That's right.
that is such a
I think
valuable
that's a
skill.
big difference, Gustav, because I never really wanted to run a shelter.
Right.
It is a shelter, but it's a temporary shelter.
Right.
It's a shelter with a vision, with a purpose, with a hope. So they come through, they stay in that shelter, which is a safe place for some time, but then they recover and they get restored, and then eventually they move on with a skill. And it's a channel that people pass through, is a pipeline, and then they see hope on the other side. And I like to say, the stories are very dark, and I wouldn't like to touch on that tonight, but they're really dark stories of deep suffering. However, I like to say that our work is also a story of hope.
Of course.
Because I can truly tell you, I could sit here tonight and tell you about hundreds of stories from girls who found inspiration and help and joy in marriage or in a career or in having kids, and lives which are truly restored. One thing that we like to say is that we're in the business of restoring lives.
Right.
That's what YouCanFreeUs is all about,
I love
changing
that.
lives, of rewriting life stories.
I love
That was
that.
another one that we used for quite a few years. We're in the business of rewriting life stories, and every life story can be rewritten. And I think we learn so much, because it is also a lesson for us that no matter what we've been through, we can always be transformed and start again. And I've seen that over and over again. So it is a story of hope, tremendous suffering, but then the joy and the transformation that I see, I think, is what inspires me and what moves me
Oh, definitely.
to carry on going.
Yeah. And I think, moving from that into Compassion Ukraine, obviously, this is we see it on the news and the media, and for us that lives in the UK, I think all of a sudden we realize that it is something that's on our doorstep, but yet we've not actually been there. Now you've actually been there.
Yes.
You went to the borders. Tell us a little bit, what did you see? What did you experience?
Maybe I'll just start a little bit before and just tell you why we even started with this, before we even decided to go to the border. So, modern slavery is a crime of vulnerability. What we saw and what moved us to start is that we started hearing a lot of stories of the number of women and children trafficked through the border was increasing dramatically, whether it was the Polish border, the Romanian border, the Moldova border.
So is it all Ukrainians being trafficking into these countries? Or is it just all these countries, people trafficking them out to wherever?
No. Well, actually a little bit of both. What happened, as we know, the men stayed behind to fight. So we're talking about women and children actually crossing in a very vulnerable state, looking for help.
Right.
And every time something like this, there are the good people who engage and truly try to help, but we also have the bad people who take advantage of that.
Right.
So, it was shown in a documentary recently on television, on BBC, I saw something on Sky News, men preying on these women, gangs praying and offering, help, food, transport, let me help you, but actually then taking these women and children, and exploiting them and making them selling them into whatever, it's brothel or, a factory or whatever. So using them and exploiting them. So we saw the numbers kind of rising. So that was kind of the initial connection. We are an anti-human trafficking organization. There is a war that is just breaking in at our doorstep. What can we do to engage? So that was kind of the first thought process. But then later on, Gustav, it was mainly about responding to a big crisis that is affecting all of us one way or another. And I think sometimes when we see a reality and we have something in our hands that we can use to make that situation better, if we don't do it, we probably will always regret.
Of course.
So at that point, what did we have in our hands? We had the knowledge of this problem of trafficking. We've had operations in Eastern Europe for a number of years. Actually, 7 years we had a branch of YouCanFreeUs right there in Poland. We had a lot of networks in place in Romania, in Moldova. So that meant that we were able to do something right there on the border.
Right.
That we're able to help people right there because we knew the networks. I mean, network is everything, right? You need. So it wasn't something like, oh, we're an organization that suddenly is trying to do something from the UK or from India. No, we already, had the network in place. So the first step was actually to release some of our own finances from the charity to help initially do something, which by doing something, I mean by buying what was needed, critical medicine, medications, critical food supplies, and help even generators because the power was being cut off on and off in several areas. So that was kind of the first, what can we do to engage? Then we launched the appeal, which is called Compassion Ukraine, and we are asking people to donate towards a very targeted operation in the south of Ukraine, in Odessa.
Okay.
And then I'll unpack that a little bit for us tonight. So we had a lot of context previously as well in Ukraine with different communities. So we received a request from this community in Odessa of 600 people, mainly very young children, elderly, and also some disabled people who would never be able to do the crossing.
Right.
It's not everybody that want to do the crossing. Second, not everybody can physically. It's a terrible journey. I mean, even if you're close to the western border.
Well, and also what you've just said, I think is very important. Not everybody wants, even though when your life is threatened, for me it may sound simple, well, pack up and go. But do I really want to disrupt my whole life and just put something in a bag to go? That's another emotional, quite intense decision. Even though, because I think every time you have to fight for your life or run for your life, that trauma in itself is quite severe. So I can I can understand that people just don't want to.
Yeah,
even though
I can understand that too.
It is a very difficult choice.
And that's what we saw. We saw a lot of people making the decision to stay for whatever reason. And this particular community, they were sheltering 600 people in this category, I can't or I will not. And then what we saw around Odessa is right there on the Black Sea, so a very strategic city. Recently, the bombing started there as well by the Russians. And what we saw is that a lot of those people needed the supplies, but nothing was available. So supermarkets had been closed, there was nothing available, pharmacies were closed, so there was a lot of critical medication that was needed for that community. So they reached out to us with a very specific list to start with. These are the products, we're talking rice, we're talking pasta, we're talking canned food, baby formula, basic medicine, and some generators. So this is what we need. Can you provide? You cannot buy that in Ukraine. So now back to the first point of having a network in place right there in Eastern Europe. We were able to purchase all these items in Bucharest and on the border in Romania.
Right.
And I say Romania, it could have been Poland, but it was Romania because Odessa is in the south of Ukraine. So the border that makes sense was Romanian border. So we bought everything on the ground in Romania. We had in place the trucks for delivery with the proper permits to cross the border. And then it was an amazing experience. I was there just last week. And I myself, together with the group from YouCanFreeUs, were able to buy the goods, were able to load the trucks or help them to load the trucks, pack everything. And then the trucks crossed the border. And within a few hours, it arrived safely in Odessa to the community that needed it.
Right.
So, I mean, when we talk about direct impact, Gustav, I think that's just amazing. I was in tears to see the videos and the photos of everything arrived and being, unpacked on the other side. And I think that's probably one of the good things about being part of a small organization. It's small but mighty,
yes.
Right? Low budget but high impact, and having the flexibility to make these decisions on the spot raise the money, buy the goods, pack the truck, deliver. There is no overheads, there is no big decisions to make. It's a direct impact. The people were cheering on the other side, and I was like, yes, And again, there was a sense of urgency because we kept hearing on the news, Russians are about to take over the Black Sea, they will bomb Odessa, and if that really happened in a big way, maybe the roads would all be blocked. So, there was that fear of, can we get supplies there before? So that's kind of what happened in that trip. But we also decided to go to the border. You asked me just now about the border itself. So the border was an interesting experience. I think all of you would have seen on television the scenes of the families coming and the tears. But I have to say that it's nothing like actually being there. It's almost like you enter the personal drama of every family that passes through the border.
Right.
And just to see in their eyes the expression of finally I'm safe, and taking that first deep breath as they step into Romania. I was in the southern border of Ukraine and Romania, and then I went to the northern border of Romania and Ukraine. And it was the same experience. But what I see now is that the number of refugees that are coming through the border has decreased.
Okay.
So it's almost like whoever needed to cross has crossed.
Right.
And the people who have not crossed, they made the decision we're just discussing, that they will stay put and they will shelter the best way they can, whatever they can. So the number is decreasing. It could be that, if the situation gets even worse than it has been so far, maybe more people will move through the border. But the numbers were definitely in the hundreds while I was there, not in the hundreds of thousands as it was at one point. So there is a lot of aid on the borders. It's very well structured, it's very organized. There are a lot of organizations already helping. And I think I saw the worst, the drama, but I also saw humanity at its best.
Right.
People generally helping. I saw even government people and police carrying the refugees' bags for moms who were just exhausted carrying babies.
And were they walking across?
They were walking across. The vast majority, they were walking across. So they might have taken some sort of transport closer to the western border of Ukraine, and they come walking with a little backpack, babies and kids and whatever they can carry with their hands. So I did see a few cars, but the vast majority was just people walking. And then a lot of different organizations helping, from people offering, technology, people offering food, people offering to charge people's phones, to offering shelter, offering help to the pets. I saw a lot of traumatized pets, cats shaking and dogs shaking, being carried by...
Of course, I've got two, that's my family.
And babies screaming. I saw everything. And children absolutely clueless, what is happening, and carrying one little toy. And then, so I think when they see that first smile, and I have to really say something about the Romanian people. What I saw there was just amazing, the way they're opening their homes and they're opening their hearts and they do everything they can, to help some of these families. It was just incredible,
Wow.
I know they're doing the same in Poland, and I'm sure, it's the other countries on the border as well. But because last week I was in Romania, I was really observing, from the government to the civic societies, to NGOs, but just normal people also who were just there at the border. It was a lot of genuine help, and I'm here for you, I stand with you. So that was amazing.
And what do you think, so you're feeling over there, for the next couple of weeks and months, what will be the plan of action?
Yeah, so what we plan to do now through Compassion Ukraine, I think it has two sides to it. One is to continue to support communities like this community in Odessa that works with the municipalities, works with other NGOs. It's basically a network of different organizations, and they've decided to stay and support the people on the ground. So the first thing is to continue to support them. So initially we're able to send aid for about a month. So 3 weeks have gone. So they have, from our side, they have another week of food, medication, and the generators were a one-off now because the power is on and off. So that's the first part, support communities in Ukraine. The second part, I think, is support the refugees that have crossed the border and are not necessarily installed in families. No, so they're staying in those refugee camps right on the border. So we visit one as well in Romania. 150 refugees is staying in pretty basic installations with very little.
Right.
So those organizations are also running out of steam, and they need more volunteers, they need more funds to be able, they're offering refugees 3 meals a day. That's a huge cost.
Of course.
You know, they're offering light and, facilities for them to bath and everything. So it is a huge cost. So we spotted a few organizations that we've already had contact in the past. So I would like to support them, as they support the refugees. So that's kind of
Right.
and that's already refugees that have crossed the border. So I don't really see an end to this war anytime soon.
Right.
Every time we think there will be an agreement, it looks like,
It's two steps back.
So unfortunately, I think we have to prepare for the worst and to continue to stand with the people of Ukraine. And I think that's why we want to carry on helping the communities inside Ukraine, as well as supporting refugees that have crossed the border and have nowhere to go. I think another interesting thing, Gustav, is that not everybody can actually make the trip to the UK. I mean, it's amazing that the government is offering the scheme where, if you have a family that sponsors you, you can actually come and stay with the family and get a humanitarian visa. It's great, but I have actually spoken to a lot of families in my last trip that said, we would love to, but how can we even get to the UK?
Right.
It's not like we've got, we need to buy flights, we've got 3-4 kids, or,
Right.
even if we try to go by bus or by train, there are costs involved, we wouldn't even know.
That's actually something that I've not even thought about.
Yeah.
Because I know, one of my clients, they've actually taken on a family. They've got like a little annex in the back of the garden. And it's I think even with doing something like that, I think it's a brave move to, you need to be really wanting to help, to allow people to come into your home. Because, it's
not knowing that.
Not knowing
It's
that.
an amazing act of kindness, and
It is.
I also know some families here who have done that,
And because she and I actually spoke about it, and she said to me, "What do you think?" And I'll be honest, I said to her, "I'm not sure if I would. I'd rather just give the money because it is. You don't know. Like you said earlier, you get good and you get bad, and none of us know. We hope it's all good.
That's right.
But I think we definitely, wherever we can help, we should help. So I think earlier on you touched on it a little bit, but for You Can Free Us, I know you said it's a direct impact. So for relating that to obviously Compassion Ukraine so my understanding is that whatever funds you have, it's not like a filter through. It can actually be used for there and then what's needed.
Yeah.
How can we make this happen? It's quite a fast moving.
It is, and I think it's interesting. Now, even the accounts are separate because I know that some people are moved. Some people are moved in general by the modern slavery issue, but some people at this very moment, they are touched by the crisis in Ukraine, right? And they want to help that specific cause. So that's why we launched this specific appeal. So people who donate and they contribute to that cause, the funds will go directly to that initiative.
Right.
So all of us, including me, we're volunteers in the organization. I've been a volunteer with the organization for 12 years. So that minimizes costs, that minimizes overheads. So I think there is a direct correlation, Gustav, between every pound that you invest in this project and the result that you see.
Right.
And people can even choose. I would love to be supporting, the generators specifically. So I had a group of people who recently donated some money here in the UK, and they're more like technology, type of people. And they said, actually, I would like this money to be for generators. I understand the issue, and there are so many hospitals in need of power right now.
Of course.
So, but they cannot function. There is no light, or it's on and off cutting, and you need to do a surgery, you need to operate. So I think that's a great thing. And they said, we will give you enough money for 3-4 generators. So we want to contribute with generators. A lot of people are touched by the kind of the non-perishable goods and baby formula. And, I had some moms in the local school saying, we want to donate towards that. Can you ensure that we'll go towards that? And because we're small enough to be able to, to deal with the accounts at that granular level, Like we receive the requests in the spreadsheets, we know exactly what's needed, so I can say, okay, if that's what you want to do, I'll buy baby formula, and that's where your money is going to go. So it's not going into a general account that is paying for a whole lot of things, and then eventually, which is fine as well. I mean, I understand large organizations, that's the way they operate. But I'm just saying that I think there is such an excitement about seeing exactly where your money goes. And the second point is the speed, right? So it's not like, okay, I'll donate now and hope in the next few months. I mean, it's literally next week. The generator, we received the money 2 weeks ago. The generator is functioning. I was able to actually send the pictures of the, the box being open and being tested and diesel going in.
That's amazing.
So, I like that. That's kind of always how we've worked throughout these years, this kind of direct impact. Same thing now back to modern slavery, when people say, oh, I like to contribute to the vocational training of a survivor, and then we're able to map that as well. What is her dream? Oh, she wants to be a hairdresser. Okay, what does it take? And then, she would do a specialized course, or it could be nursing, whatever the dream is. And then that person funds it, and then he sees the immediate result within a few months, and we're able to actually, that transparency and accountability, which I think is so important as well. No?
Oh, definitely. And I think, and also, one of the things earlier you mentioned, which I'm not sure if the people at home, which I never thought about, was when you explained, You Can Free Us and the connection with the Compassion Ukraine, that, people crossing the border, there can be human trafficking happening there as well.
Right there.
And we don't, I think for us living in a privileged society, some of these things, we don't even comprehend what opportunities people see that they can take away from people. So I think, the fact that your organization has stepped in to help is amazing, but how it actually links to what you've done before is even more amazing. Because I think, because also, even though You Can Free Us supporting people with the goods they have, because of the psychological background you have and all of those things are all things that come in play, to help these people on their journey forward.
And one thing we did at the border as well, we were talking to a lot of organizations who were already there with their tents and their infrastructure there, and we were asking if there was already some even visual aid support for people arriving, kind of warnings or raising awareness about potential dangers of predators right there. Someone, don't go in any car. If someone said, I'll give you a ride.
Yes.
These things seem obvious. It's usually things that you teach your teenager kids or your children not to go with strangers. But the truth is, in the time of stress, tremendous stress, you've got 3 babies, they're all crying. Your husband stayed back there fighting the war. You're desperate. You really don't have anywhere to go. And someone offers you a ride and say, I've got baby formula, whatever, in the car, seems like a nice person. I think your judgment is a little blurred at that moment.
I think people do a lot more sillier things in normal situation. How much more, when you are under that severe pressure and the emotional drama that goes with that, if I can say it. It's quite
it's a moment of vulnerability, and it's always where predators come in. So again, when people usually ask, but how does this modern slavery happen? People are not wise enough to make a good decision. Why do they accept a job? But if you think about it, if you're without checking, so maybe you're in a poverty situation, maybe you're starving, maybe you're desperate, then you get a job offering somewhere in Europe, in Western Europe, and it looks great. And it's almost like you want to believe that this time is true and that your dreams will come true. And then you check, but maybe you don't check it fully, or maybe you don't even know how to do all the verification, and then you end up coming here and you're sold into a brothel or something like this, or you become a slave in some sort of company. And that happens again. I mean, you asked in the beginning some of the numbers in case people don't know. We're talking about 40 million people in modern slavery in the world today.
40 million?
40 million people. And that's a very conservative number, because how do you actually know how many are trapped? You can only get the numbers as they are revealed, but because it's a hidden crime, it's very hard to measure. So we're talking about 40 million people. It's a huge number. We're talking about, this is a real criminal industry.
That's just slightly less than all the people in the UK. I think 65 million,
Yes,
40.
yes. So it's a huge number. I mean, the numbers in the UK are also shocking. We're talking about 150,000 people, which in a society developed as the UK with strong laws and law enforcement, I think is also a shocking number.
Yeah.
To think that there might be over 150,000 people in all sorts of slavery conditions and in this country. So 40 million is the number that we sort of estimated of modern slavery around the world, which is actually bigger, Gustav, than the number of slavery throughout the slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade in 400 years. That was not 40 million. So now today is 40 million.
Right.
So, it's always a question, how far have we really evolved as a society?
Yes.
Have we learned anything?
Yeah.
So it's a shocking number when you put into perspective. So, and also in terms of the profits of this business, I think is also another number that some people know, but you listening tonight might not know, but it's about 150 billion annually in profits. So it's comparable now to the drugs dealing and the arms dealing. So
Really?
it is a huge organized crime. Some people say it's even more profitable than drugs because drug you sell once. And unfortunately, what I'm going to say is quite terrible, but a person you can sell multiple times. You can sell that person over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's quite a shocking comparison, but it's something.
It's shocking that we talk about, obviously it's happening, but we talk about people like they are a commodity, selling people, and you think, nowadays we're fighting for animal rights and being vegan and these things, but yet they're on our doorstep with 150,000 people in the UK and 40 million across the world. I think. Obviously, I'm all for animals and I support all of those things, but these are, this is like serious crimes.
It is. So I think it's this fight is something that we should always think about and see how we can engage. And again, when I give this number, some people say, "Oh, this is overwhelming. What can I do?"
Well, this is one of my next questions.
Yeah.
What can? So obviously, we all know we can donate money. If people want to donate money, how do they go about, and what other things can they do to help?
Yeah, so I think there are quite a few things. I think awareness is a big thing. I started by saying that in the good old days, 15 years ago, when I started with this issue of fighting modern slavery, people didn't know what modern slavery was, and now people know what modern slavery is. Yes and no. I've also come across a lot of people who are still kind of shocked by the figures and the numbers, and people who really want to know, but it's happening. Where are the slaves, right? Here in the UK. And again, they can be nail bars, they can be in car washes, it's everywhere. They can be restaurants, they can be agriculture. So it's quite mixed and it's very hidden, but it's right here, among us. So that's, I think, the first thing I think is really to get informed about this. Learning a little bit more, and there are so many sites, so much information, so much content that you can learn in the world as well as in your own city, in your own country. So get informed. I think if you're more interested in raising awareness, there is always the possibility of inviting people from organizations like YouCanFreeUs, and there are many others out there that can come and speak in your community. You can do an event. You've participated in one quite a few years ago, before the pandemic, that we did at the Royal Geographic Society, which was an awareness evening. So we spoke a little bit about that. There were other topics as well. Then we had a table, desk where we had a lot of information. So I think raising awareness is important because people need to also be able, Gustav, to identify, to spot the signs, as we say.
Wow.
So, how do you know if someone is a slave or not? It's not that obvious like it was in the good old days now. So it's, you have to learn some of this and then be able to communicate that to the police or to the modern slavery hotline or whatever, you might be able to do. So I think those are important things, raising awareness, learning more about the topic, perhaps hosting an event, donating, either to an organization like YouCanFreeUs, or there are so many others that you might be. And again, some work just with modern slavery, fighting modern slavery for children, some work with women, some work with men. You know, there are different, some work just with sexual exploitation, so fighting the sexual exploitation part of modern slavery. Others are more interested in forced labor. I think another important thing that people can do is find out about brands. It's a slightly different conversation. We might not have time to go in great depth tonight, but a lot of brands are committed to be slavery-free in their supply chains.
Right.
Others are neutral.
Right.
And if you're neutral, it's you can be sure that you're supporting it. So, and then again, it's not just making a statement, we're against slavery, come in our establishment, there are no slaves, but actually you need to be able to look at every product you consume and you have in your establishment and make sure that once you track it far back in the supply chain, there is no slavery involved. So if we're talking about clothing, and you may be a clothing business, you might not have, of course, in your shop slaves, but do you know the source of your cotton? Or do you know the source of your silk? How far back should you go to the cotton plantation, perhaps? You know, the manufacturing process. So there are several stages that you need to check to really be slavery free. And some brands do that better, some brands do that terribly.
Right.
And I think now there is a lot of pressure from society as we talk about sustainability and so many other concepts to make sure that the social side of sustainability, the so-called the S of the ESG, the environmental, social, and governance, make sure that the S is covered and that products and brands are really slavery free, and then support the right brands and boycott the wrong brands. That's one way to also do. And ultimately, I think is donating and making sure, you know, the money is really going to support survivors or support awareness programs, which is what we do.
So if people want to support, obviously, You Can Free Us, do they go, you've got the website?
We've got the website, is probably the best way to do it. On the website, you can select whether you want to support the fight against modern slavery in general. So that means that the money will go towards the restoration, the recuperation of survivors. So we'll go directly to our safe houses where the survivors stay for those 2 periods that I described, and then the money will go towards nutrition, will go towards therapies, accommodation, clothing, food, everything that the person needs for 2-3 years until they're ready to live an independent life. So that's the first thing. Or you can choose at this point in time that you're more touched about the Ukraine crisis and you want to support the victims or the people, the vulnerable people suffering from the war. And then on the website we have that separation, like I was explaining, the accounts are separate, so you can say this money has to go towards the compassion, Ukraine compassion appeal, and that will go towards the specific initiatives that I described here.
Right.
It can go towards generators, it can go towards non-perishable goods, it can go towards medication. One thing I didn't mention, Gustav, I think it's important to say, medication is a critical thing as well. So we are already supporting a lot of requests for general medication, and by that I mean over the counter, whether it's paracetamol or whatever. But we also have requests for very critical medication. So if you think you're a diabetic person and you're sitting in Ukraine and there are no more pharmacies, you cannot buy your prescription, your medicine, what do? These are like life, death, threatening diseases, no? So we are able, through a network of doctors here in the UK and doctors in Romania, we're able to buy a certain quantity of insulin, which was then shipped, loaded into a truck, and it arrived at Odessa within, a day. And again, the community was able to give to the people who needed it. And there were a lot of children in danger, a lot of adults as well. And that was kind of a one-off supply for 21 days, but again, we're running out of it. Right. So it could be that you're touched by that side of the story, there are so many pieces of this narrative, like I said, a narrative of suffering, but also a narrative of joy, once you can give that to those who need. So if you want, then the money can be towards medical supplies or can be towards medicine, so I think that's the flexibility, which I think is amazing.
I think the first time I met you, you were talking to me about it, I was one of the naive people who thought, oh, that can't be possible. And, you know, when you explained it to me, and I think, you know, with Compassion Ukraine, I think even again, you know, you and I had a conversation not too long ago when I've said to you, you know, you are born for this.
Oh.
And, you know, I look at you and I stand by that. You know, I think we need more people like you know, who are not just going to the forefront, you know, or just standing back, but actually going to the forefront, being there, and, you know, they can report back to us, you know, the actual truths about what's going on in a neutral perspective, rather than, you know, all the hoo-ha that goes with it.
That's
you know,
right.
Things like, you know, you mentioned like medicine. Obviously, it's things that we know of, but we don't really. Well, I can speak for myself. It's not things that I really have thought about. You know, you think war, but, you know, because it's there, it's far. It's not. You don't realise the, you know, food supply, war. It's water. All of these little day-to-day things that I take for granted is things that, you know, these people. It's a life and death situation.
It is. Yeah.
So
it's amazing to be able to have, like I said, this direct impact and really it's transformational now.
Yeah.
Because it's, like I said, is one dose of insulin that can save someone's life. Is a bit of food that day that can actually, you know, save someone as well. So I think it's I think that's the beauty of this type of humanitarian work, used well on the spot, you know, in a very targeted way.
Yeah.
That can make the difference now.
Amazing.
And I'm just amazed to be able to participate.
So, any last words before we say goodbye? Anything you'd like to share with the audience or anything else?
Yeah, no, I mean, I did not say the name of the website, so that's probably something I should repeat.
Yes.
No, if I didn't say, I can't remember, but it's www.youcanfreeusuk.org. So YouCanFreeUs, I think it's easy to remember, uk.org. So have a look at there. We always update in the website with new information, new photos, new videos of what we're doing. Also follow us on social media. We're in all the channels, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, so you can, you know, follow up the latest of what we're doing. And I think the last thing I wanted to say is about Gustav Fouché as a person and as a business. I can't finish, you know, without saying this. I think this is an amazing business. I mean, now I'm talking with my hat on sustainability and the other work that I do. And I think now there are a few businesses actually that are focused on the 3 Ps, as we say. So it is, of course, a profitable business. It has to be about profit, but ultimately it has to be about people and about the planet. And I think even initiatives like this, Gustav, it just shows how your business and you are connected to what really matters. And actually, it's all, they're interdependent, all these things, because the more you invest in people and the more you invest in the planet, you actually become more profitable. So it's beautiful how there is such a link between this. And I think the businesses that have discovered that are the ones that will be very successful in the near future and the long term as well. So I admire your business and I admire you for opening the space and opening the doors. And it's not the first time. So thank you very much for the opportunity and for the amazing business you have.
Thank you very much. And I did not pay her to say that. That was very unplanned. I want to thank you, Clarissa, for coming to sit in our pink chairs with us. And we will definitely have you back at a later stage, you know, to hear what's happened. I'm sure you guys will follow it on the news. But I've admired you for a very long time. And thank you for your kind words. You know, we do try, and I think, you know, we all should try. Try tomorrow a little bit harder than what you tried today, and make it all a better time. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.